Giving you guys a second to start logging on, and then we'll begin the video, guys. Oh. How's it going, Dave? You alright, fella? Kind of going out of my own comfort zone with this one today. Let's wait for a few more people to log on before I start yapping away. So, quite a lot of stuff to cover, in the whole topic, but I'm already prepping for next video I'm going to be doing. You can see with a few bits and bobs I've got lying around over there. So, trust me, Dave, I'm definitely out of my comfort zone. I'll explain why. Right, okay, so got the people logging on now, so I might as well start talking. Flip it round, get my mug on camera. Oh, there we go. Not too much glare from the light behind. That is a broken washing machine, Dave. Had a bit of an unfortunate turn this week. Everything seemed to come at once. MOTs were due, and then the washer decided to the drum just decided to collapse mid-spin. So that was a fun day. But yeah, we've now got a replacement over the back, sitting just behind me. Now actually matches the kitchen. That one was only a cheap one to fill the gap until such time as we got one to match the rest of the kitchen, because we're still decorating, as obviously you can see from the video. So still a few bits to do, but hopefully get all of them before Christmas. Right, so anyway, hello, good evening, Merry October. Welcome to the next YamYam Retro Gaming stream. I'm on my own today. I was hoping to do some videos with some of the other guys this week, but it's not quite worked out that way, so I'm on my own again. But the good news is some serious pieces of kit have arrived, finally, that I've been waiting on for ages to be able to do this video for you. So today we are covering... Flip it round. We are covering the NEC PC Engine. We are covering some of the peripherals and the details and things around it. We're going to talk about the type of games and everything that you could find on this system. We're going to try and understand some of its many foibles, and then we're going to be looking at a whole dose of awesomeness with this, the Super SD System 3. So I'm going to flip back to me, and I'm going to start talking about the system. So anyway, so the PC Engine, right? The PC Engine, for those of you who don't know, most of you do. I know I'm kind of talking to most people who know what they're doing, but this is for the sake of everybody. You know the score by now. So the PC Engine anyway, otherwise known as the TurboGrafx 16, it was a system released in 1987, back end of 1987, in Japan by the NEC group. And originally it was released as a white console, and to this day it's probably one of the smallest, might be able to tell on camera there the way I'm holding it, but it is one of the smallest mainstream production consoles ever released. The whole system itself is probably about 6 inches square, and it is literally a cube, you can see there. I'll put it back here next to my head, you can get an appreciation for how small it is. I know I've got a heed, but you know, it is pretty small. If I hold it in one hand there, you can see just how small it is. Like I say, the original system was white, released in 1987, but over its lifetime, the PC Engine saw more revisions than anything else we've seen since. We've had, over the years, we've had loads of iterations of Nintendo 64s, PlayStation 1s, PlayStation 2s, and now we're into the realms of special edition consoles where all they are is a new lick of paint. Well, the PC Engine is a completely different kettle of fish. Now, the reason I really wanted to talk about this system, and the reason I've not done it until now, is because up until this point, it's one of the major consoles from the past that, you know, has got a firm place, maybe not so much in this country, but certainly worldwide. And I've never, ever actually owned one, nor have I gone into any kind of detail in playing the system. I'm aware of them. I've learnt about them over the years, but what I haven't done is sat and got hands-on with one, spent some time with them, and besides a little bit of emulation, I've not actually played them at any kind of length. Now, I knew that needed to change. I've got a lot of friends on the gaming scene who are big fans of this system. There's a lot of friends out there talk about this all the time, and there's some guys on our team who, you know, they rave about it. Gareth off my team, Rog off my team, they love this system, and I'm starting to see why. And hopefully when I show you some of the footage in a minute, you'll start to understand why. The system itself was released as one of the first ones in the, well, 3rd/4th generation of gaming. Technically, it should be considered a 3rd generation console and should be grouped in with the 8 bits. It was originally designed to compete with the 8 bits, but the time that it came out and what it was technically capable of planted it as kind of the first release of the 4th generation, so the 16-bit era. So when you're talking about its main competitors, it started out as intended to be the NES, the Master System and such like, and it ended up competing with the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, which was a really tough act to follow. So, you know, even though technically it came first, its exposure wasn't as wide as it should have been. It got a massive release in Japan. It didn't get much of a release in America, and it got even less in Europe. Now, originally it was released in Japan. It came in a white console in exactly the same profile as this, and was just simply called the NEC PC Engine. It was a sort of off-white colour with, I think it was red writing on the front, and the system itself takes, rather than cartridges, these, which are called Hue cards. It was partly to do with the fact that NEC had a kind of partnership with Hudson Soft. You can just see the label on the back there. And a lot of the titles that appeared on the system were from Hudson Soft, so a lot of their mascots kind of made their way onto the system. And because it was such a small system, they were able to pack the games into these cards, which you may have seen the likes of before. Similar on the Sega Master System /SG 3000, which again were Japanese only systems. Some of the early games came on these cards. They can't hold a ton of information, but it was enough for an 8-bit system. Now, I've said 8-bit a few times, and I've talked about the era it competed with. The PC Engine was an extremely curious piece of history. The reason being, technically, it is simply an 8-bit console. It's got an 8-bit processor inside, so an 8-bit CPU, but with a combination of chips, much like some of the systems that came afterwards and tried to force their specs up. This actually didn't, but it had a 16-bit graphics processor and other features that came from 16-bit era. It had a more advanced palette. It had access to better sound capabilities, but it was all governed by an 8-bit processor. So the type of games you see on the system are very, nothing like you see on anything else. They're a strange hybrid between, you know, the NES, you know, typical NES platformers, you know, shoot 'em ups and things like that. But then they've got like pretty good, like, you know, sound like you'd expect to hear on, say, a Mega Drive, and then you'll hear samples and things like the kind of you might have heard on the SNES. Do you know what I mean? So you get this kind of weird hybrid between the two generations, and I think that was why it's the kind of system that people didn't really know how to receive it at the time. Now, the other thing that made it complicated was it released with a good selection of titles, released in Japan okay. When it went to America, they changed the marketing slightly. When they released it in America, they released it as the TurboGrafx rather than the PC Engine, because PC Engine makes you think of PCs, and it was a bit of a strange name for it anyway. But they kind of marketed it different, and they created a great big hulking machine called the TurboGrafx, which is about 2.5 times the size of this. It kind of extends all the way to the side to be about this wide. It's a lot deeper like that. Still got the same expansion ports and things like that, but I think they did it to make it appear to be a more powerful next generation machine. I don't know, but that seemed to be their strategy. It got released in PAL territories in the same guise. It was a black console called the TurboGrafx. They dropped the 16 label, and it was sold in the UK and in Spain. And weirdly, in 1989, they released the Japanese model PC Engine, the white one, in France. So it wasn't exactly a clear-cut marketing strategy. So you can understand why people were a little bit confused. The advertising was mixed up. The budget certainly wasn't there like Sega and Nintendo had, and people didn't really know what to make of it. The biggest thing, however, was that in its lifetime, the PC Engine saw no fewer than 17 different consoles. And when I say different consoles, I mean they're not just colour splashes. They're not just, you know, a lick of paint and, you know, maybe a facelift. They're completely different models, and it made owning one, I would imagine, a serious pain in the arse. So you've got your typical system like this. Now you've got your power port on the side, just there. You've got your card slot on the front there, which as you flick the power switch across the front there, it kind of brings a tab across, which locks the card in place and stops you sliding it out. Then on the front, you'll notice one controller port. I'll go into that in a minute, which is like a mini DIN profile. Not a whole pattern I'm familiar with, but certainly a mini DIN profile. On the side there, we've got a video port. Now originally, the PC Engine simply had an RF connection on the side. They changed that with this model, which came a couple of years later, which is the Core Graphics. It's basically just a simplified version of the PC Engine, and it added standard RCA video out capability. And then on the rear, we've got this, which is the multi-face extension. Now, this was designed to do a number of things, which I'll go into in a second. So, the PC Engine was standard. The TurboGrafx, for all intents and purposes, was pretty much the same. Most of the consoles had similar inputs and outputs, but then there were some subtle changes. There was a version of this called the Shuttle, which was aimed at younger gamers, and it was shaped like a weird spaceship. And they did away with the expansion port on the back, but it had a new port for being able to back up save games and things like that. And it had different, I think it had a different controller port as well on that. So you needed an adapter to use mouse controllers. You also had a CD add-on, which came a year later, which was called the CD-ROM 2, which was, I think in America, in Japan, it was called the CD-ROM was the way to pronounce it. Very strange, but basically what you get is you get your console like this. You'd get an adapter plate that went on the bottom, much like a Mega CD2, and then there's like a bar section that went across the back here, and it linked the multi-phase port to that, and the CD system literally went on the side, exactly the same size as this, and it added CD functionality. There were a load of CD games released this system, so many of which were pretty good. So first of all, it was available as two separate units. Then a couple of years later, they came out with the Super Graphics, which was actually an updated version, which still had an 8-bit CPU, but they added some extra graphics capabilities and extra sound capabilities, but sadly it didn't catch on at all. There were only ever 6 games made for it, and even though it was compatible with most of the expansions, when they finally merged the two systems later on, they merged the HuCard based section and the CD section. They created what's called the Duo, the PC Engine Duo, or the Turbo Duo, which had both card slots and CD slots. They went back to the spec that was found in the original systems. So again, it's getting extremely complicated. There was a laptop version of this, which I know one of my friends has got, where there was a flip-up laptop section that came up and down at the back here, but that was just for HuCards, but you could plug in the CD extensions. They updated the CD-ROM system to a version that just kind of slotted onto the back here, There was the Turbo Express GT, which was a handheld version of this. That was actually one of the cooler models of this. It was a full handheld version of this. It wasn't that much to be able to shrink this down and pack this into a handheld console. You actually would have seen one in a film. I think if you look at Enemy of the State with Will Smith, his kid in that, or well, the guy who actually captures the footage that could be used for blackmail, he owned a PC Engine GT, and he's running around without his pocket for most of the film. So that was one that appeared in the film. But the good thing was that it actually took the same HuCard games that you could plug into this system. So you could actually buy this and the portable version and use the same library of games. So that was one of the better ones. There was a version that could be added to the Laserdisc players, the Pioneer Laserdisc players, that allowed you to add HuCard functionality, and there was certain games that were released called, I think it was L-Disc, which were the same as you kind of saw on Laserdisc games anyway, like Space Ace or Dragon's Lair, but they were just in this format. I've been on for ages here, and I'm still going. It just shows how many damn revisions of this were made. It got ridiculous to a point where I can imagine back in the day, nobody would have known what it was because it didn't have its own real identity, because they kept changing it. Nobody could really attach themselves to it in the same way as, you know, say, a Nintendo or Sega console, which it was competing with. So you can understand why it was difficult to kind of pick up. Not only that, but as far as collecting goes, it would be extremely difficult to collect for this system because of the things that I've talked about. Now, you know, some of them had different video capabilities, some of them had different controllers. This is the controller that comes with the core graphics. You can see the colour scheme matches. Now, Dave, I really like this off from memory. That's why it seems a bit kind of scatterbrained sometimes. This is from the Core Graphics 2, which was a later version in a slightly different colour. And then you've got this one, which I believe was from the original PC Engine. Judging by the colour, you can see this kind of off-white colour. Has got a little bit of yellowing on it, to be fair, so, but that's kind of typical fare. But at least they stay consistent with these. So, you know, but like I say, the connection on the end differed on some of the consoles, so getting peripherals for it was difficult. As I'd already mentioned as well, the systems, all of the systems only had one controller port, which is stupid, absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. There's only two of the systems I can think of which have only got one controller port and needed two, and that is the CDI and the 3DO. The 3DO, of course, used a kind of daisy chain effect. You'd have to plug one controller in and then other controllers into that. But this adopted a slightly different method. If you wanted more than one player on this system, what you had to get was you had to get yourself a multi-tap. Now, multi-taps were common for most systems, but they weren't required just to be able to play a two-player game, you know what I mean? And that seemed a bit, you know, that would definitely have harmed it as far as, you know, a home toy or console would have gone. So it seems that not only that, but there are a million different versions available. This, curiously, is a 3-player adapter. Now, why you'd want a 3-player adapter as opposed to a 4 is very strange. You know, most multiplayer games, if they weren't 2-player, they were generally made to be 4-player. And then you've got things like this. This is the official TurboGrafx Turbo Tap. And as you can see on, just make out on the picture there, this is a 5-port multi-tap. So, you know, there's so many different things available. It's difficult to say, you know, where to start when it came to buying one back in the day. And as a collector, I couldn't even really point you in the right direction with regards to what to start collecting. I'm still not entirely sure what goes with what. I'm still not entirely sure what I should be picking up, really. But everybody knows me at this point. I'm all about, I love owning original hardware, but to me, it's all about playing the games. So as long as I can pick it up, go to it, instantly play my games and play them in a good way, that's exactly what I'll do. Now, the good thing about these systems, no internal power supply, it's done externally, and so with this, even though this is a Japanese system, you can take a UK power supply, plug it in, totally works, great. They also had a curious video signal on these, and the video signal was actually NTSC all around the world, but when it came to the PAL markets, there was a special encoder in their RF modulators which allowed it to display on PAL TVs. I only found that out very recently, so you know that's one I'm quite surprised about. Just going to read some of the comments here. Yeah, the white one was the original. Thanks, Mike. Sean, R-Type, Vigilante, Pac-Land, Dragon Speed. Yeah, there were some brilliant conversions. I'm coming on to the games now as it happens. So, so as far as I'm concerned, I just wanted a system I wanted to play and play well. Now, when it came to selecting a system, I asked for a long time amongst my friends. I said, which one should I get? The reason I hadn't got one until recently is because I just didn't know which version to get, and my sights are more firmly fixed on other consoles, right? So, as luck would have it, again, Gareth, I've mentioned Gareth a lot on here, he's a good friend, he's a good member of the Revival team. He said, I've got a couple of PC Engines, I've got one for sale, this is a good one to start with, and so he sold me this Core Graphics. I'm sure he won't mind me saying, but I picked this up for the princely sum of 40 quid, which is an absolute bargain. To find one of these as a standalone system now, you're looking probably about £60 to £100. Box probably about the £100 to £150 mark. So you know, I think it was a pretty good deal. And there's a few ways you could actually get the video output from this. You've got the port on the side, which allows you to get RCA out, but you can actually get RGB from the back. And rather than buying a dedicated cable for here, you can actually get one of these, which is a kind of strange franking thing. So you've got your standard RCA outs on the end there, you can see. And then on the other end, you've got like a breakout section. And the breakout section has got several little pins there. And if you look in the back of there, you can see there's about, I think there's about 50 pins or something in there altogether. You basically attach these to the correct pins there, and you can output the video signal cleaner from the back panel than you can through the actual side port there. So that was a great solution when I first started playing it. However, I really wanted, and I've been shopping for a long time, I really wanted a PC Engine CD. Now, I'd been asking a lot of people about it, and a lot of people had said, don't buy a PC Engine for the CD games. And I said, why not? Now, I'd seen some of the games, they look really cool, and they said, well, the basic thing is, first of all, you've got to get the right CD system to go with the console. Not every CD system attaches to every console, or if they do, it becomes extremely awkward. And because you've had several components putting them together, there's any number of failure points, which is a real pain in the arse. So, okay, so that's one problem. So I started looking at the Duos, the PC Engine Duos. Now the PC Engine Duo, like I say, was a combined system. They look very nice. They were the later models, where you had a Hue card slot and you had a CD drive, obviously. And I thought that would be the perfect solution. A couple of problems with that. PC Engine Duos, Turbo Duos, and the last model Duo RX, they're not cheap to buy. You could be paying anything up to about £350 for a decent one. And again, there's problems with the reliability on the CD side again. So it's like you're forking out all that kind of money, and even though they can play copies, you're thinking, oh God, well, am I going to fork out all that money and find out I can't play my games? Not only that, but in order to play the CD games, most of the CD games came with a special card, and you had to have the right card in the Hue card slot in order to play certain games on the CD system. They were region locked cards, so you had to have the right region card for your system for that game. there were about 3 different BIOS revisions, so you had to get the right BIOS revision in your region to play certain games, and it would change for others. And the different CD systems actually had slightly different RAM inside and different features. So putting this together, I was trying to read up on it, and it was so hard to get the information straight. So I made a decision. I thought, forget all that. I don't want to know, right? I haven't got the time to messing about with any of that. Now, I knew the second I got the system, I was going to buy an EverDrive. Now, I've got EverDrives, you know, we've been into technicalities and the legalities of ROMs and all that rubbish before. We're not going to discuss it again. I wanted an EverDrive. I was going to get an EverDrive for this system, whatever happened. The Turbo EverDrive, Crix makes an official one called the Turbo EverDrive, and as it happens, I did have a Model 1 Turbo EverDrive, which I did use, but unfortunately that was faulty, so couldn't continue using that. Thankfully, there is a much better solution for this system. Now, there's been some big research into flash devices for CD-based systems in recent years. There's been some big research into EverDrives. We've now got Chinese clones flooding the market. It's much cheaper to be able to run an SD-based system for your console than it ever was. Now, like I say, we've now started to see flash devices appear for CD-based consoles once the drives start to go. Well, there's one company that's gone that extra mile, and they've come up with something even better. And it's this. This is the Super SD System 3. Now, I know this is what a lot of you have logged on to see who like your PC Engine stuff. Now, this system has only been out about probably 12 months tops, I think, at this point. And it's already undergone one revision because of some early teething troubles, let's say. And the system itself, it comes boxed like this. It's from a company based in Spain called Terra Onion. These are the same people that make the Neo SD, which is like the first flash cartridge for the Neo Geo home system AES. And they're also working on a couple of other projects which aren't yet come to fruition. But this is probably their crowning glory piece at this time. So the system itself looks like this. This is it. It looks like a huge kind of bulky expansion thing, and it basically plugs onto the rear of the console. So on the back of the console, you've got the expansion port. You can see the expansion connector there. It just plugs onto the back of the console there. It leaves a gap at the side to be able to plug your power supply in. It feeds power entirely from the PC Engine. But what it does is threefold. First of all, it's an EverDrive for the PC Engine. So it's got a SD card slot on the side, which is kind of difficult to reach, admittedly, but once it's in, you don't really want to be fetching it too often. That pokes in there, and it supports up to 256 gigabyte SDXC cards. So, you know, it's got a hell of a lot of expansion potential. So it's an EverDrive for the PC Engine. So you can fit the entire PC Engine HuCard library on in about probably 2 gigabytes tops, you know what I mean? The second feature is it uses the expansion slot, and it's got the circuitry inside to output proper RGB SCART through the back without the need to modify the console itself. And it does it using, some of you will recognise that port there. This is a Mega Drive 2 RGB SCART connection. I haven't actually got the RGB SCART cable now, and there's a very specific reason for that. Basically, I believe there's a fair amount of snobbery when it comes to picture quality on retro consoles, and I'm not a firm believer in getting crystal clear pictures. Part of the retro gaming experience is kind of experiencing it as it was. We can't often play them on CRTs because it's not practical anymore, and we can't often get them you know, get a kind of display picture that is acceptable out of an LCD, okay. But I'm not expecting crystal clear 4K, you know, clarity out of these things. I just want to be able to see it, to be able to hear it. So what I've got here is a standard Mega Drive RCA connection. So we've got the yellow, white and red plugged into the side of the TV over there. And I can tell you now, the picture quality through this is bang on the TV I'm using. It's a cheap TV. It's going through a SCART block on the side, but it's not outputting RGB SCART picture. It's just outputting standard composite RCA out. And the picture quality is perfectly good. To test it before I actually got this cable, because I didn't have one of these lying around, I used a standard Mega Drive RF connector, and even that worked, which I was surprised, but it did. But for those of you who care about their picture, you can actually now get an RGB. You can actually now get RGB SCART connection using a Mega Drive 2 RGB SCART cable. So if you really care about your picture, you can do that. Apparently there was a revision 1 of this, and there was a slight complaint with it in that the quality of the picture going through the RGB SCART wasn't quite there. Well, I can tell you that the RCA is perfectly fine on this, so I imagine the RGB SCART now is pretty much bang on. Probably not quite as good as fully modifying the console itself, but as close as you're going to get anyway. So that eliminates that. Now the third thing this does, and this is the real party piece of the system, and the main reason I wanted it. Let's try and plug this back in. I don't know why I'm trying to look at it through the camera and line it up, and it's right here in front of my face, but that's what I'm trying to do. So plug that back in, and we'll plug it into the system. Put it all back together, because I'm going to show you what's what in a minute. So it just slots there onto the back of the system. Now, of course, the expansion slots on all of the consoles were pretty much the same. The TurboGrafx had like a protrusion on the back, which allowed you to plug on this, so you can use it on that. I think there's only like one system you can't actually plug this onto. So most PC Engine systems this will work with. That's the other good thing. And like I say, it feeds power straight from the system itself. So you're laughing. And when you're left with it, you're left with a console very small with just this on the back. Now, the real party piece of this is that not only does it play the HuCard games, but the system itself fully emulates the complete CD system of the console. So any PC Engine CD games, any TurboGrafx CD games, they all work. It's actually got an FPGA, I think it's an FPGA Cyclone or something in there. I don't know what the details are. But the board in there is an FPGA based system, and this unit here, this quiet system with no moving parts, completely emulates and does away with the need to have the CD system part of the TurboGrafx. It does it all in FPGA, so it's not really emulation, it's pretty much, you know, hardware simulation, I suppose is the best way of putting it. It means you won't have any moving parts, you won't have any extra kind of power drain, you won't have any worries about CD failure. So it's all there in one unit. The good thing as well, like I say, it plugs onto most systems. It is also region free, and I'm trying to think what else I was going to say. Yeah, as Gareth just said there, it's a perfect colour match for this system. It's a nice compact way of doing things. So, you know, it seems like a much better system and a much better choice than investing in a CD-based system. Now, cost isn't exactly a great point on this one. And part of the reason people have put off getting it, and the reason I put off getting it, is because it comes at a price. You can only order it straight from the manufacturers, and this thing costs €240 plus shipping, which by the time the exchange rate came in, put this at, I think it was the total price on this was £265 to get it from Spain to here. Now, it seems like a lot, and it is a lot, but like I say, buying a PC Engine Duo would have cost about £300 to £350 anyway. Obviously, I only paid a few quid for the PC Engine itself, so I got a good bargain on that. So all in all, this has cost probably about the same, but it's infinitely more reliable, doesn't draw any extra power, Got no kind of compatibility issues. We don't need CD-ROM access cards, as you'll see shortly. You can actually do all that in software. And, you know, I'm getting a better quality picture out of it. I've got everything on a menu, and I haven't got to buy an EverDrive. So, not only does it tick the boxes, it really gives you... It completely opens up the system. And as Gareth's just said on here, guys, yeah, he's arrived today. He's ordered one on the strength of me getting one. And he had to pay £15 extra customs charge. But thankfully, I dodged it with mine. So I got lucky. But then again, when you order one, the exchange rate is going to determine a lot. So anyway, so that is now my complete PC Engine system. And I'm extremely happy with it. As well as that, I've got my controllers. Now, when I had these controllers, a few of them are a bit flaky, but I've done the usual thing. Taken them fully apart. I've cleaned the membranes. I've cleaned all the parts. I've used alcohol on all the contacts. And I've sorted it all out, and now the controllers all work like new. The controllers on these are pretty funky as well. You've got a decent feeling D-pad, probably not the best out there, but responsive enough, and it does, you know, feel good under the thumb. You've got 2 buttons, which is slightly limited, but you got to remember when this came out, it was designed to compete with the 8-bit systems, which only had 2 buttons as standard. But it has got a select and a run button, so select and start. And not only that, but most of the pads have actually got auto fire built in, which is superb because there's a lot of games on here that will utilise that well. So I've got a few controllers now, and I've got my multi-tap. I'm not going to plug it in now because there's no real need to, but I want to thank Nick at Vintage Gamer for this. Nick kindly donated this to me for the video, and he said, you know, you can take this away. You know, I don't have many TurboGrafx PC Engine shoppers in my shop. Take it, use it for the video, hang on to it, and, you know, play multiplayer at the event. So I want to thank Nick for that. So I have now got a full multi-tap for the system, so we're putting this to good use at future revival events. So I've got all the kit now I need for it. I ordered a new power supply, I ordered the RCA cable, and I've now got EverDrive functionality. So the system itself is fully ready to play, and I don't need to be buying games. I'm not a shelf collector anyway, and so I've got everything I need in one system. So it's time to fire this bugger up and see what it can do. Just trying to find the best angle for this, where you can still hear my voice and you can see the screen well. So let me just mess with the camera a little bit, put it into a decent frame. I'll tap the focus in a second. Try and eliminate the glare a bit. There we go, back in focus. Oh, we're on the piss a little bit there. Let's straighten that up a bit. Alright with you guys, should be sweet, yeah. So, let's turn on the TV and see what we get. Like I say, I've got this now going in through it's through a SCART block in the side, but it's only a standard RCA connection. So all we do is we flick the switch on the front of the console. No light LED on the console itself for this, but there is actually, in the back of the SD System 3, there's an LED indicator which flashes at the back here by the SD card and shows you when it's accessing either the Hue card file or the CD access. I think it also gives LED warnings if you've got any kind of errors and stuff like that as well. So at the moment I've got in here a 32GB card, but I have ordered a 128GB card, which should be enough to hold pretty much the entire CD based library and all the Hue card libraries. So I'll be swapping all these over to that when I get it. So let's turn it on, and when you flick it on, assuming I've got it connected properly, sorry, 1 second. I've got a bit of dust in there, all the messing about I've done. Got the card in there for definite. We'll have to plug the controller in as well. There we go. loads up just like that. You get the SD3 splash screen, and then it loads straight into the selection menu. Now, anybody who's used EverDrives will see straight away this is far more advanced than what you'd see on most EverDrives. In most EverDrives, they're implementing it using the system's hardware and minimal drain on resources possible. So you've usually only got a simple text menu. What you've got on here, you've got a full text menu. As we scroll down, you'll notice that the text actually rolls across. If you've got long file names, it will scroll across and give you the full title name. And if you notice down in the bottom right hand corner here, if I go down the list, I haven't fully sorted this out yet. I will do it when I get my full SD card, my proper size SD card. But in the bottom corner there, you can see we get a little bitmap image of the game to give you a preview. So much like having a front end system on, you know, on an emulation PC or arcade system, you can see a preview of the game before you actually play it, which I think is an awesome touch. Okay, it's super low resolution, but if you've forgotten what a game is, especially some of these Japanese ones that, you know, you're not awfully familiar with, then a screenshot in the corner can definitely help you. You can get all the tools you need for this straight from the Super SD System 3 part of Terra Onion's site. So anything you need, you can get straight from them. There's a little tool you can get, and once you've added your ROMs to the card, you use this tool and it will automatically add the screenshots as it sees fit, as it finds them on your card. So let's go have a quick drink and then I'll carry on. Getting a bit dry mouth here, sorry. Right. So yeah, the other feature on the screen, you can see obviously you've got your slider bar at the side. It tells you at the top whether you're on Hue cards. Yeah, definitely, Aaron. How's it going, mate? So you've got Hue cards in one menu, and you've got CD-ROMs in the other. And you can see the instructions are on screen, so it's pretty idiot-proof. You just hit the select button, it'll switch between the two different menus. I'm getting a little LED indicator to tell me that it's reading from there. And you can switch back and forth between the two. When it comes to adding the ROMs to the system, it's very easy to do. You need the files in unzipped PCE format, as most people who are emulating PC Engine will know, and you just literally drop them into the root of the card. You don't need any kind of BIOS or launch firmware or anything on there. You just do it with a clean card. It will automatically create a folder for your save games. And the good thing is it doesn't appear in the menu at all. It does when you plug the SD card into your computer, but it doesn't appear in these menus, so you can't accidentally go into it. You can create another folder as well and dump the BIOS files in for the CD system. It's a beautiful menu, Gareth, honestly, it's superb. It also gives, like a lot of front ends at the bottom, you'll notice a few things changing there. You can see on some of these, it's coming up with the year. It's coming up with a genre, which is quite cool. And you can see at the bottom there, we've got a few buttons we can press to do some things. So, first things first, we'll launch a game. Now, the kind of games you generally get on the Turbo Graphics tend to be early to late 80s arcade ports, and very good ones at that. You tend to find a lot of shooters, a lot of shoot-ups on this system. A lot of platformers, quite a few RPGs, and with it being a very very Japanese focused system, there's obviously a fair bit of anime and a little bit of hentai in there. There's a few picture collections you can get which are officially released. So you'll see a few Japanese. You'll see a lot of J in the list here because a lot of the games were Japanese only. The American releases, they didn't get many. And there were I don't think there were any PAL exclusives, and if they were, they're not of any note, so not even worth talking about. So I've got mostly US ROMs on here, well, mostly Japanese ROMs, but US where possible. You know, there's English translations of some games. It's even got a couple of NES port collections, which are really strange. I don't know if those are official or unofficial at the time, but you can play certain NES games on here, so worth mentioning that. And but yeah, some of the titles here you'll recognise. Aero Blasters, I think, came out on arcade and a couple of other platforms. Afterburner 2, obviously I think that got a Mega Drive release, and just recently I was covering the FM Towns Marty. Afterburner 2 was released on there. Then you've got more space shooters. We've got a scrolling kind of hack and slash 'em up there. We've got some crazy little Japanese platformers. Robo Kid, Ballistics. We've got a Batman game, not quite sure what that's like. Now the good thing is, because I'm kind of just discovering this system, I've not had any time to really look at the game list in any kind of detail. And certainly not got a chance to play them all. But I can tell you the ones I have played, I'm fast becoming addicted to. It's a very good system to play, it's a nice comfortable controller, and the library is massive, so there's plenty to keep you occupied. And because you've got a lot of ports that other systems didn't, and got some fantastic ports, there's some games I just want to play on here that I've ignored completely on other systems as well. Now there's a couple of games as time went on, I was just talking about ports. This got one of the best ports of Street Fighter 2 that was around. It was the only one to get a direct port of Champion Edition, proper normal Champion Edition, and you can actually get a 6-button controller for the system. However, they are a bit more expensive and I haven't got one. I am tempted to build one, but I might need to kind of, build a joystick for it. But I think I may still need to hack a 6-button joypad to be able to do that. So I may or may not do it, but you can play with a 2-button pad, and I'll show you that shortly. So yeah, it certainly had an extensive library of games. I'm going to go down to what's typical fare for the system, and one of the most popular games is Bonk. Bonk, if the system had a mascot, Bonk was the mascot. He's a little dude with a big bald head, little caveman type dude, and if it was to have a mascot, Bonk would probably be it. It's one of Hudson Soft characters, and he has appeared on many systems over the years and in many games, but most prominently on here. So we're going to launch that up first of all. We just hit the run button, and it loads in, and ROM loading is pretty much instant. I'll give us a little bit of volume, and we should be able to see on some of these games what I was talking about with regards to being an 8-bit game, but having very much a 16-bit kind of aesthetic to it. So, this is an 8-bit game. You can see the level of animation we got there is a little bit more detailed than it would be on some other 8-bit games. The backgrounds look basic, but the palette and the shading on the characters is certainly better than you would have seen, on 8-bit platformers at the time. The sound effects aren't anything special, neither's the music, but this is a pretty early game and a pretty basic game. But it's a pretty looking game, It's kind of like, best way to describe it is like Wonder Boy on steroids. It is a fun game to play, and I'm not going to bother playing it because the demo is probably showing a much better version of gameplay than I actually could, so I'm going to let the demo do the talking for me. So that's Bonk's Adventure. Now, there is actually a software shortcut we can do to go back to the menu, but it doesn't work on all games. They're still kind of implementing it. They may do a future firmware update for it. And if we hold select and run together, it should reset us back to the menu. So let's just try that. There we go. Let's reset the system back to the menu. So yeah, that's kind of like one of the flagship games for the system, but it has got some other cool games. So we've got 1941 Counter Attack, obviously a very popular vertical shooter from the arcades back in the day. Assuming it's working. I haven't tested all these ROMs. And there's one, typical, I haven't tested, so we'll try that again later. Wonder Boy 3, the Dragon's Trap was released and the PC Engine is called Dragon's Curse. I'll scroll down actually and I'll see if I've got that on mic. How about that? Dragon's Curse right there. I love the instant loading, not have to wait for it to write to the RAM chip like it has to normally. Super graphics ROM. Oh, 1941, oh that's why then, Gareth, sorry. I didn't realise that. Yeah, 1941. I had a feeling there's something strange about that. I'll have to take that one. Mind you, I won't take it off the list, I'll just separate it into another folder. That way, if I ever do need to transfer this SD card to a different console, you know, using a standard EverDrive, then at least I've got Super Graphics games on there. So, cheers guys. See, I'm still learning a lot about this system. So, yeah, you can see what I'm saying here. Like, the detail on these is probably a lot more detailed than you would have seen on the Master System or the NES. There's a lot wider colour palette going on in here. And the sound effects got more layers to it than most 8-bit systems would have had at the time. Asshole. Should have known he was going to jump at me. Die. Very basic scrolling action this, but still good fun. And you can, like I say, the controls are nice and fluid. You know, they're well-designed games, and it helps when you've got a well-designed game with a well-designed controller. You know, the controllers don't feel super cheap. They're pretty comfortable to hold. They're somewhere between holding a NES controller and holding, I don't know, holding a Mega Drive controller in terms of feel. They're lightweight, but they're in a squarish profile. They've got nice soft edges. So yeah, pretty nice to hold. I'm probably taking a repeating path here, aren't I? I think I'm supposed to double back or take the alternate path. There we go. And you can see if I just turn up the sliders on here, I can hold the button and I've got an auto fire going on. If I go to the fullest speed, it does that. So, can help you cheat in some games, I suppose. The text in, I think the text's all in English on this one, Gareth. Which is handy. It certainly wasn't all the title screen and that, but I haven't spoken to anyone yet. You do speak to people on this game, don't you? So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the text is all in, is actually in English, so. Let's kick Mechagodzilla's ass. Or get my own ass kicked, whatever comes first. Yeah, me get my ass kicked first. Yeah, I'm getting my ass kicked. But yeah, this is a great port. I'm liking this as a port. It's quite visually impressive, you know, it controls well. I just suck at it, that's the only thing. I never claimed I could play these games well, I just said I could play them accurately. Give me my coins, man. And turn to the dragon. I'll take that. See, I could go on forever with this. That's the sad thing, I could keep playing this. I'm really kind of getting back into it, so I'll resist temptation and we'll go back to the menu. Or attempt to, there we go. Yeah, if you just tap it, it kind of does like a soft reset of the game. If you press both and hold it, you can go back to the main menu. So from here, we've got a few other options anyway in the menu. If I press a 2 button, you can see we've got an option menu here. You can have it boot to last game automatically. so you can have it that when you just turn the console on, it will automatically go and launch the last game you were doing. But that's kind of pointless, because if you look at the top of the list, there's already a load last game option anyway, so you don't have to go down the list and find it. When you turn it on, you can just hit that and launch straight back into the last game. So that's kind of a pointless option, but it's there if you want it. Then you've got enable in-game trigger. That's what I mentioned about being able to soft reset using the select and run button. You can enable or disable that. Apparently it can cause problems on 1 or 2 games. I've not found any problems with it yet, although on some games it just doesn't reset at all. So it doesn't crash the game or anything, but it doesn't reset properly. So I just leave that enabled all the time. Now skip CD-ROM, press run. This is probably a good time to go over to the CD-ROMs actually before I carry on talking about this. There's a lot of games I can show you, but we'll go over to the CD-ROMs. So from here, what you first need to do when you want to play the CD-ROM sets, yeah, there is a version of Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers on there, Mike, in a very strange palette. I'll go to that shortly anyway. We'll take a look at that. But yeah, so with these options, when you first put your games on the system, you have to set a BIOS. Now, there was a card released called the Arcade. I think it's the Arcade card. And as the box brags about for the SD System 3, it actually says that the Arcade card functionality is built in. So you can just enable Arcade card or disable it simply with that option there. But there's only a couple of games where you need to kind of disable that in order for the game to boot. There ain't many, but you can re-enable it just by going there. You can actually dump your own games to this if you've got a Hue card dropped in there. It says CD block volume. I'm not quite entirely sure what that does. I think that's if you're having problems reading the ISO files that you put on here for the CDs, but I've not encountered any serious problems with it. And then of course from here you can actually create a BIOS folder on here. You have to pick a BIOS to start with, and then it will kind of keep that BIOS in memory. And even though the systems were region locked and you needed a certain card to run a certain game on a certain system with this, you can actually leave the one BIOS selected and most games will actually boot because there's no other kind of region lock in place. So if I go to that, you can see here I've got the Japanese original CD-ROM 1.0, 2.0, 2.1, Games Express, which I think was some Japanese exclusive strange card, Super CD-ROM version 3, that was like the last Japanese revision. That will make most things boot okay. Then there's a version 2.0 and a version 3.0 American TurboGrafx CD Super System BIOS. Now the reason I've kept that one active is because from what I understand, if you have the American one on, even when you're launching certain Japanese games, you will get your text in English, which is what I want. So I leave the TurboGrafx Super System 3.0 American BIOS on as my standard BIOS, and that launches most things I throw at it. As far as formats go, oh, there you go. Thanks, Gareth. If I was reading CD block, I was reading that CD block volume is if the sound pops, you can reduce it to get rid of popping. I haven't noticed any major major sound glitches, Gareth. You'll be pleased to hear. So I think we should be all right. So yeah, the CD games, the way you have to put them on the card is a little strange, but it's not out of the way. It will only recognise bin and Q files, and I think you do need both of them to work, or Q and ISO files. And again, you need both for it to work. And the way you have to do it is you have to create a folder with the name of the game on like that, as you want it to display, and then you drop the Q and the bin file into that folder, and then when it actually loads up on here, it will automatically list the folder names, and then all you need to do is select the folder and it will launch the thing inside. You can see there was an option here for skipping the CD-ROM, press run. That's because when you originally had the CD system, if I just turn that off, if I try and launch a game here, the first thing it will do is it will go to the CD BIOS screen. Did I turn it off? Can't remember if I actually turned it off or not. Come on, reset you bugger. And now I can see I can't get this one to reset with the software shortcut. I'm trying to think if I actually hit the right switch there. But basically I disabled that, so let's try that again, hang on. Oh right, skip CD-ROM, press run. Right, we turn that off. Enabling game trigger, yeah, okay. Enable, okay, yeah. Then we go back. Now if I go to this now, you'll see it stays on this screen because it will show you then what version of the BIOS you're running, from what region, and then you're supposed to press the start button to launch it. So you can turn that on or off. I've got it by default to skip this. It will automatically press run when you go through it. The only reason you'd want to go to this is because from this screen you can actually manage game saves by pressing, I think it's the 2 button from here, or the select button, is it? There you go. So here you can actually mess with the backup RAM for this BIOS system. Now, that's how you would have done it on the original console. It would save games to the RAM that's built into the system. Now, the big problem with the PC Engine, it had a tiny backup RAM for the main console itself, and even though the CD system added a little bit of RAM, it still only had a tiny backup RAM on there. So you could only save a few games before you'd actually completely run out of space. So, you know, that completely sucks. So this is how you would have managed it back in the day. The good news is with the Super CD system, Super SD System 3, sorry, is that, let's try and, I can't you reset from there? Yeah, I won't reset this guy. But the Super SD System 3 does what a lot of EverDrives do. Rather than using a battery backup or, you know, some kind of non-volatile, you know, volatile way of storing it, it will actually create a save file on the system. And you can see in the menu here, we've got an option to enable, where is the option? There's an option anyway to be able to select between saving games to the proper RAM on the system or whether to back up games to a separate file on here. We'll create a folder on here called BUP, and that's basically your backup save file. So the good news is then you can save like an infinite number of game save backups. You can copy them to your computer and you can keep backups of all your saves as well. So quite a neat feature anyway. So there we go, per game backup RAM. So you've got an option there whether to use the RAM on the system or whether to use the RAM file system, and that's what we've got active here. So I'm going to click that to skip it. And now I'm going to show you a couple of the CD games. Now this is where the TurboGrafx, the PC Engine, really starts to intrigue me. And the reason being, like all of the CD systems that were released and CD expansions, the idea was that it added functionality to games. Now the other day I covered the Mega Drive, the Mega CD and the 32X. As well, you know, as well known as those systems are, they weren't that widely adopted. And part of the reason for it was Mega CD games were crap. Let's face it, there were some decent ports there, but it was hampered by having to co-use the Mega Drive's processing power, and all it really did was add the capability to add a CD soundtrack, and people thought that FMV in games was the future, and as we all now know from as time has showed, it just wasn't. So, you know, it was crap. It didn't really do anything for the system. When it comes to the CD system for this, it might not have had a great impact on the grand scale of things, but in terms of me playing this system now, I think the CD games are where it's at. There's actually some ports here where there's actually a standard HuCard game as well as a CD version of the game. So you can see there I've got Altered Beast listed. I've probably got it listed on here by its original Japanese name. which is, as anybody would know, is Juoki. There it is. Juoki, which is the Japanese name for Altered Beast. Exactly, Mike. Exactly. There was a couple. Soul Feast was a good game, but there weren't a lot. Definitely weren't a lot. So, this is Altered Beast for the PC Engine. Now, the reason this one holds good memory for me is because back in the day, a friend of mine who might tap into this and watch it back, a guy called Andy, he between me and him and his brother, we probably had. We were the ones who kind of had the most diverse range of consoles amongst us, and the reason being is because we would go to the specialist shops and we would start importing systems before importing systems became a big thing. When the 5th generation was about to arrive, that was when everyone started discovering the possibility of importing the systems, because obviously Japanese consoles got a much earlier import than we ever got over here in PAL region. We were usually the last, and usually quite a while after the rest of the world. So we had the I'm telling you, Gareth. So when everyone started importing Saturns and PlayStations and things, that was old hat to us. We were already importing stuff. Now, my mate Andy actually imported himself Turbo Express, the GT, and I think I did a deal with him. At one point, I had that in my possession, and I really wish I'd been able to hang on to it because it was an awesome portable console. And the Turbo Express now is going for about £200-300, in collector circles. So I really wish I'd hung on to that. But he only had a couple of games, and this was the very first game I played on it. And to play this on a portable system back in 1992, I think it was, absolutely blew me away, because it's a really, really good arcade port. It doesn't look and sound much on a big screen, but on a portable system, and it was a decent screen on the PC Engine GT. It was really something, back in the day. We were dealing with Game Boys, at best Game Gears, and shitty things like the Lynx, and then I was playing this, which is as good as the arcade or the Mega Drive ports. Okay, there's less speech. The music isn't quite as refined. And I'll tell you what, the difficulty on this is way, way harder than the Mega Drive or the arcade game. I've memorised all the patterns on those, and they're really easy. I can complete those without breaking a sweat. But this, it's a lot harder to dodge, and you can find yourself in some situations where you're kind of trapped in a corner, and you're just basically being beaten up by things jumping on top of you. So you have to be careful, but I'll just play this through a little bit. Snatcher was a curiosity, Aaron. Spider-Man, yeah. The thing is, they weren't anything special, considering you were adding CD functionality. They didn't add anything particularly to the games, That was my complaint with it, and that was most people's complaints with the early CD systems. So you can see there's no speech there, but you can see him graphically powering up, so already better than the Master System version, which obviously was an 8-bit version. And this is what I was talking about games being a kind of hybrid between 8 and 16-bit. You can see there certainly aren't as many layers going on in the background. There's not as many enemies on screen as you'd find in a 16-bit game. It is full 2-player, you can play 2-player on it. But it's definitely got 16-bit shading and probably early 16-bit music, which is acceptable. Like I say, compared to some of the home computer ports, even the best stuff on like the Amiga and the ST, it pisses on it. It pisses on the Master System version. Yeah, definitely, Mike, yeah. And we'll just try and complete a level, and then I'm going to show you a comparison shortly. So again, a little bit lacking without the speech, but full-size enemy. See what I mean about getting trapped there? Super cheap. And I'm dead. So anyway, like I say, a lot harder. If I now go back to the menu, attempt to, there we go. There is actually a CD version of this game. Very unusual to get a normal version and a CD version, but it's a good way of comparing. If we now launch this up, so straight away the title screen is better, much closer to the Mega Drive version. You can hear a deeper dynamic range on the music, just about. A lot closer to the Mega Drive version. And there's some expanded kind of functionality. Now this is something you didn't even get on Sega's own platform, you know what I mean? This was Sega's game and they couldn't even be asked to do this on their own system. Okay, I can't understand it in Japanese, but you know what I mean? That image should look familiar. That was the box art for the Mega Drive game. So already, you know, NEC have one-upped Sega on their own game by adding something, okay, not super impressive, but certainly got a bit more depth than, you know, would have been found on anything that Sega did with their own games. You know, they barely improved the ports when they did a Mega CD or a 32X port. So we've got, you know, some custom art, we've got proper speech, we've got CD quality sound, and it's just giving the game that little bit more depth than it had. But anyway, let's get into the game now. And that's clearer than the Mega Drive. We've now got speech, we've got slightly better animation, we've got a bit more colour, better quality audio. Now one thing I have got to mention is I have actually noticed a glitch in this. I think I've got a bad dump of the game here. Shortly the game will actually pause and it won't carry on, and I think there's a flaw in the ROM that I've actually downloaded, but the rest of it is all, you know, working the way it should be. If I'm getting change into the beast, I'll be able to show you. You saw a short pause there, it was loading the next section from, well, what would have been CD. And a bit of quality audio there as well. Here. This is unfortunately, for some reason, I think I've got a bad dump of the ISO. It's a lot better, Gareth, a lot better than the Mega Drive did, you know what I mean? Still doesn't look quite as good graphically, but certainly got the better samples and much better presented. But like I say, I think I've got a bad dump. This is as far as this game goes. I do need to get a better dump of this game, because I can't go any further now. It's just stuck here. I can't progress. I'm not quite sure why it does it. So, but you can see the difference. So if I go back to the title screen now, I don't think there's any other games I can directly compare like that. But we'll show a few more CD games and we'll see, like, you know, what I think a CD system should be doing from that time, you know. So let's take a look at Right, quite a visually impressive one. This was the sequel. This actually be Castlevania 5. So we had Castlevania 1 to 3 on NES, Castlevania 4 on SNES, and then we had this, which was never released in the West, unfortunately, back in the day. It's Castlevania. It's Akumaju Dracula. Is it Sinno Rondo? It's basically Rondo of Blood, Castlevania 5. And on this, we get this rather awesome kind of animated FMV intro.
Auf der Schattenseite des Friedens und des Wachstums gab und gibt es aber auch immer das Böse. Die Menschen beginnen, das Wachstum abzulehnen und bezeichnen den Frieden als Degeneration. Wir haben uns hier versammelt, um die Mächte der Finsternis mit unserem verfluchten Blut zu rufen.
Just going to sit and watch this for a minute because it's really cool. I don't know if any of you have seen the Castlevania animated show that was on telly, but that was really cool as well. It is German indeed, Gareth, yeah, because I think we've been Transylvanian. I think part of the thing he was there, wasn't it? I think it's because the family was supposed to be German, weren't they? The Richter family. It's awesome, mate, honestly. I've already got a game started. I mean, listen to the echo on that. Nice bit of parallax. Got some good quality speech there. I'm telling you, mate. Like I say, this is 16-bit and beyond, you know what I mean? And the music's awesome. Sorry guys, I love this game. And of course, with it not being Nintendo, and with it being Japanese, all the religious imagery is still there. The animation's brilliant, sound effects are awesome. I mean, I love Castlevania 4. Not that much in love with the original NES games, but I loved Castlevania 4, and this is just like almost as good. Visually, it's probably a more impressive, I would say. And the guy here, goddamn patterns. Oh. Like I say, damn hard game. The size of enemies. Die. Oh, didn't expect that. Get my ass kicked. But that is like I was saying, you talk about, you know, seeing the potential of the system. This looks so much better than those kind of early, you know, games from the console did. You know, I was talking about Bonk just, you know, looking at that original port of, you know, Altered Beast. This is just another level above. And there's a lot of other games that kind of pull similar tricks to this. And they try and keep things original for the system as well. See if we can reset it. Soft reset it. No. I'll just turn it off and back on again. It's a shame the soft reset doesn't always work, but you know, not too bad. We'll go back. Another game I wanted to discuss because I'm really intrigued by it is this. Now, Double Dragon, everybody knows Double Dragon. Double Dragon 2, people know the arcade game was basically based on the hardware for number 1, and it was more of a kind of reskinned facelift. There wasn't much different in the way of the levels. But, you know, the Double Dragon games never really got accurate home ports. There was modified versions for the NES and other consoles. But Double Dragon 2, again, once it came to the home, the game which came to the NES was more like a platform game than a fighting game. And this port here is something you'll find really interesting. So, as I've discussed, looks typical at this point. You know, you can pick one player, two player hitting each other, two player not hitting each other, changing lives, you know, typical fare. But when we actually go to the game, it's like nothing I've ever seen, and I'm a massive Double Dragon fan, so let's just kick it in. You'll notice a big difference straight away. So straight away, the graphics are completely different. The combat, not like the arcade. Get my ass kicked. Not like the NES. The music, CD quality audio, decent sampled sound effects. Still got the left and right attack function, and if you look at the bottom of the screen, the power bars, the timer and everything are just like the arcade version. But graphically, first of all, Billy Lee has got red or brown hair instead of yellow. And Jimmy Lee is the one with blonde hair in this. And we're going to get to the end of the first stage, just so you can see if you can spot the differences. Now, I've played the arcade game a lot, and I know that the NES version is very different. Haven't played the NES version a lot, but I know that it certainly wasn't as playable as this in terms of moves and fluidity. It's got a decent kind of 80s kind of rap music background. Pretty standard enemies so far. So I'm going to play through to the end of the level 1. Oh! Using auto fire now. It is well faster, Kieran, honestly. This is a really, really good fighter, especially for what is technically an 8-bit system. This is more like 16-bit. Okay, it's no Streets of Rage, but it has got full two-player mode. Very playable. If you've got yourself a PC Engine CD, yeah, this is the CD version, Kieran, yeah. If you've got a PC Engine CD or you've got one of these SD System 3s, honestly, the games on the CD system for this are just so much different to the standard games. You know, what I was talking about, the Mega Drive, the difference in the games was obvious because everything was FMV based games. The actual direct ports of standard arcade games and that weren't much better, you know, on the Mega CD, and that's probably the best basis for comparison I can offer, because, you know, there weren't that many systems that actually got a CD add-on, but obviously the Sega one was one of the most prominent ones. You can see there the spade, which is obviously one of the items from the arcade version of Double Dragon 2. Those enemies there, those are direct from the arcade version. I don't think you had them, if you did have them on the NES version, they certainly didn't look as impressive as that. What I really need to do is lure him over here and just quickly let my dog out. So it goes. One sec. There we go. Thankfully I'm right by the door. You know what, the Mega Drive version of Double Dragon is a decent one. At least it doesn't have any slowdown like the arcade. Although I think it could have done better, you know, it could have had more speech, more accurate effects and things like that. And it didn't. And you know, the Mega Drive version of Double Dragon 2 I find very sluggish. You know, I've played this, you know, this is nice and fluid. The Mega Drive version of this is very slow, very kind of clunky. Not a big fan of it at all. I really need to get the other side in, that's it. Right, that's what I wanted. These guys regenerate, of course. And off the edge you're going. Goodbye. And now you get these rather funky between the stages as well. Yeah, the combat's not that great. I mean, it's decent on this, not a massive range of moves. But then you got these awesome cutscenes in between. Don't get this on the Mega Drive, you don't get this on the arcade. Certainly don't get it on the NES. I mean, okay, the graphics are kind of love it or hate it affair. I much prefer the arcade graphics because that's what I grew up with, and I do like the arcade music. But this is a pretty awesome game, you know, all the same. Decent amount of enemies on screen. It gets pretty hectic when you've got 2-player active. I could have actually played 2-player on my own. That's one thing I got to mention. If you haven't got a 2-player game, basically player 1's controls controls player 1 and player 2. And yesterday I managed to play the first 3 stages of this game just using player 1's joypad, which was kind of awesome. Still got the good old headlock move. Strange stage layouts on these. You have to kind of go up and down and backtrack, which is unusual. Bitch. Have it. Oh, elbow me in the face. I'll get you. So now we'll go that way. Like that is it. Then we're going to go back this way. It's good how it has. Honestly, this is a game we could definitely play through for a future YamYam video. I think it'd be good to play through a couple of games on this system. You know, for a 16-bit, you know, 16-bit, well, it's not even a 16-bit port. For an 8-bit port, with this expanded functionality, it's as good as any arcade game, you know. Like I say, it's now Streets of Rage, but, you know, the SNES never really got its own definitive brawler. I don't think. You know, Turtles in Time was good, and I'm the, you know, the SNES's biggest fan. But, you know, I look back now and I think about these games that I missed out on. You know, I've played a couple already that I'm a big fan of. There's a load I've not even covered yet. And honestly, I mean, I could do a video on all of them, and I think I will do at some point. Yeah, 12-bit Kieran, that's a good way of putting it, actually. It's the best way of describing it. Oops. Gotta walk down. Oh, it wasn't that big a fall. I think in real life I could have survived that. Good boy. Get off the edge. Good old throwing big rocks and stuff, that's what you want. That's Double Dragon as we know it. Have it. Get down. Are you dead yet, guy? Oh, up we go. All in all, Kieran, I believe there were anything up to... Well, so far, the library that I've downloaded, I've got about 60 titles. Now, there were some, like, remade ports of what was already available for the PC Engine. And then there were some, you know, CD exclusive only ports. There's a lot of Japanese rubbish, you know, like Shanghai and, you know, a load of Mahjong games and stuff. But there's also quite a few exclusives as well for the CD system. There's some really good arcade ports. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think of them all. But then there was like the point and click games like Carmen Sandiego and Sherlock Holmes and things like that. I mean, look at that. That's pretty cool. Music's cool as well. If you like it anime, this should be right up your alley. Oh, this is quite a cool stage actually. Not quite sure this has got to do with Double Dragon, but it's a bit techno punk maybe, rather than steampunk. But the good thing is with this as well is with the CD access times were quite slower on the original TurboGrafx CD, from what I understand. Of course, with this, you haven't got a mechanical disc spinning up, and it's got slightly more RAM as well than the original ones had. So the CD access times, the loading time for the FMV, for loading the stages, is a lot faster than you would have had with the original PC Engine CD. So at the end of this stage, and then we'll change up again. It's just such a cool game to play. Oh, here come the big guys, look. There's a couple of different big guys on this. And like I say, unlike the NES, you've got proper huge sprites like the arcade had, although they are different bad guys to the arcade. And they can kick your ass when you get near them. It's quite good is sometimes the door opens in the background there, and when it does, you've got this kind of mechanic where it sucks you towards it, as though you're being pulled out of the airship. I'll just finish this stage and I'll show you another one. Yeah, there's some brilliant ones on here, Kieran. I'll have a look in a minute. I tried to launch 1941 Counterattack a minute ago until Gareth reminded me that's actually a Super Graphics game, not a PC Engine CD game. Ooh. Still not as tough as a Bobo, but definitely a hard nut. I have actually completed this with the standard allotment of credits. There's actually more stages. There's more enemies. There's the stages and enemies on this that aren't on the NES version. Certainly aren't on the arcade version. So like I say, this is kind of a weird hybrid between the arcade version and the NES version. There's even a platforming stage like the NES version, a part in a tunnel as well. It's a bit less cheap on the old deaths. Oh, not good. Oh, I need to get away from that door quick. Assholes. Good boy. Oh, still one left. I thought I'd got them all. Soon finish them off. Ah. Oh, nice freeze frame. Not entirely sure. It could actually be. Get out the door. Look at that. Soon kicked his ass. Oh! Oh no! Kicking my ass now. Forgot about the helicopter kick. Forgot how I do it though. Ah, I should forget it and just kick his ass. Die. Yeah, I think it is Aaron actually. Yeah, a bit like that level. I'm getting way too into this. Sorry, I love my brawlers, man. Getting way too into this game. Then we get ourselves a nice little next bit of FMV. I say I've seen comparisons of this online, and the CD access time for each of those little scenes there is quite significant, whereas on this it's pretty much instant, you know. And then it brings you down to this stage, which is very akin to level 3 on the arcade game of Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2, going through the wilderness. But anyway, we've seen plenty of that game. Like I say, I could be here all night. I love that game. Let's go and try one more, shall we? What did I say I was going to try next? I was going to try and find some kind of shooter, wasn't I? Oh, I've got to show this, of course. Pretty much token. This, Fighting Street, for some reason, is the title of Street Fighter 1 for this. Now, this is one of the, pretty bang-on accurate arcade ports. However, original Street Fighter sucked in the arcades and sucked on every port that it had. You know, it's still the same game, basically. But I'll compare this in a minute to another game that I've got on here and show you how far the difference could be between, you know, an early fighting game and, you know, a fighting game that came a couple of years later. Now, of course, this is still pretty advanced for a 12-bit console. You know, this is probably as accurate a port as you were going to get back then. The sound's pretty much bang on. The crappy speech is there. And the graphics are all there as well. I'm bugging if I can pull off a fireball. It'll be a miracle if I can. Certainly won't pull off a dragon punch. Oh, I managed to get hurricane kick going. You better off just jump kicking the shit out of them, I suppose. I remember having this on the Spectrum. It was never a great game, but I was a big fan of it back in the day. Oh, I actually pulled off a fireball, can you believe it? So yeah, crap game, but definitely pretty much arcade perfect there. We'll see if I can just pull off a second round win. It's a wonder Street Fighter 2 ever became a game, honestly, after this, you know what I mean? I suppose it laid the foundation, but come on, it's terrible. Oh, Fireball does so much damage in this game. Because it's so hard to pull off, they have to reward you somehow. So unresponsive. Gotcha. I actually won. I could never win on the Spectrum. So anyway, Street Fighter 1. Terrible game, but a brilliant port for this system. But then, of course, like I say, talking about how far this system can go, we've got some of the more obscure Street Fighter 2 clones on here. We've got Martial Champion, which I was actually quite a big fan of on the arcade back in the day. Certainly not arcade perfect, but we'll take a quick look at it and show you what it's like. Takes a bit longer to load. There it is. Decent music. Looks okay in the presentation stakes. However, it does fall a little bit short when you actually get into the game. Anybody who's ever played this on the arcade original will know that this had quite huge sprites. You'll notice the sprite size is massively reduced on this. But you know, pretty typical, you know, pre-Street Fighter fare this. Sim better, sim worse kind of situation is the way to describe this, you know. Nothing special. Certainly not as good as the arcade game. But you know, decent, you know. Also, seems to be Konami games that don't like doing the soft reset. And we'll just take a look at one more game just to show you how good it can get. Actually, I'll show you two more games, show you how good it can get. So, on the Hue Cards list, we'll go down. And I did mention how cool it was. We'll show you Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. Like I say, this is a standard Hue Card game. It was one of the later ones for the console, but, you know, considering how much they praise the Mega Drive and the SNES versions, okay, it's a little lacking in resolution, but you know what? The rest of it is all here. The intro's there, the character select screen, and of course the cheap wins with Bison. Speech is all there. And you can actually switch between, much like the Mega Drive version, if you haven't got a 6-button pad, you have to switch between punches and kicks using the run button. Or the select button, I think it is on this. Because you've only got 2 buttons as standard. You have to, yeah, run is your light punch, then you've got medium punch on 2, hard punch on 1. But it was always so easy to win with Bison just by spamming Flaming Torpedo. Who needs kicks when you've got that? But like I say, a really, really good port, you know. Easily on par with both of the bona fide, you know, 16-bit console versions. Certainly better than the home computer versions, you know, all the combos are here. You know, graphically on par with the Mega Drive version. Got decent parallax. It's nice and fast as well. And the speech and everything, it's not as good as the SNES, but it's definitely better than the Mega Drive one. Unfortunately, the Mega Drive was never able to accurately recreate the speech as well as you know, the arcade game could. The SNES did a much better job of it. So, great port there. And then moving on to the CD. Unfortunately, there wasn't a CD version of that game. But what there is a bit of SNK love here. Fatal Fury Special. I love Fatal Fury. And this plays really well just with the 2 buttons, I'll be honest. You know, only a 4-button game originally. And in the config you can set what you want for your buttons. So there's no pause button, but you've got select and run can be your light punch and light kick. And then 1 and 2 your hard punch and your hard kick. Not the most convenient, but certainly workable. I'm not going in arcade difficulty because that's just suicide. We'll fire this up and you'll see. Now, obviously, I've discussed at length the Neo Geo CD, and you know, although technically it should have been as perfect as the arcade version, the lack of RAM and the slow CD access times made it, you know, terrible playing the SNK fighting games on that. However, on this, even though it was a CD-based system, none of those shitty loading times, as you'll now see, and technically Probably a few frames of animation missing. The zooming in and out effect's probably missing. But the rest of it, it's all there. The speech, the playability, the graphics. And straight into the game. You know, it's on par with what would be, you know, a SNES port, I suppose. Ah. So, fighting games can be really good on this, you know what I mean? You got some great speech and some great music on there. I was a big fan of this game in the arcades. And you know, on my Neo Geo now, I love playing things like this. You've got the zoom in and out features of the arcade original. Your sprites increase and decrease in size depending on the layer you're on. So you know, again, another really competent port. Probably not as detailed as the arcade. Maybe a few less colours, but it's there, it's complete. And it's certainly better than the Neo Geo CD version, because I haven't got to put up with those stupid load times. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think that's as far as we can go for tonight. I've showed you a lot. I've been streaming for a long time. So yeah, the PC Engine, definitely an interesting system. Definitely the kind of console. If you haven't owned one before and you've not checked one out before, I highly recommend. You know, trying this system, try and get into it. Pick yourself up a decent one, give it a try. If you are going to do it, I'd recommend trying to go the way that I've gone. Now, the Super SD System 3, superb piece of kit. I cannot fault it. No, Aaron, piss off. But you know what I mean? It's a serious investment to be able to get it. But for what it does, it's totally worth it. Like I say, it not only gives you EverDrive functionality for your PC Engine, it gives you access to all the entire library of the CD games and everything, all the HuCard library. It gives you RGB out with a decent cable. You know, it offers expandability with the SD card to constantly change and put on there what you want. There's no moving part. It's going to be a lot more reliable than picking yourself up a Turbo Joe. I love to own original hardware, but for me, that's all it kind of is hardware. I class this as still genuine hardware in a way. I know, technically, you know, you've not got the CD system section there, but, you know, it's kind of where do you draw the line, you know. I've updated some of my, you know, my CD-based consoles now by replacing the laser in there, and you've got to wonder how much of that system is left. It's done in FPGA, so it's as accurate as it can be. And yeah, like you say, Mike, if your system's dying, you know, the CD systems for these, they're seriously fragile, and you're fighting a constant losing battle. For the sake of practicality of events, something like this works perfect for me. And for anybody who hasn't got room for too much at home, haven't got too many systems, this is the perfect solution. And if you're going to get a PC Engine and you want to explore the entire system, get yourself one of these Super SD System 3s. Like I say, it's not going to be cheap. Maybe pick yourself up a PC Engine first, but you don't need to go stupid. Just get yourself the Core Graphics or one of the early Japanese models, you know. Once you whack that SD System 3 on the back, you've got your RGB SCART out if you want it. You know, you can use a UK power supply, not a problem. You can start picking up your peripherals, you know, as and when you've got the money for them. Pick up some, you know, some knackers, some fixer-uppers like I did, and, you know, give them a bit of a touch-up. And you've got yourself a brilliant system. And if you once you've got access to the SD System 3, you never need to buy any more games or go down the difficult collecting route. I think it's totally worth it. It's definitely an interesting system. There's a lot of games on here I want to play, and I want to play completely through. And because it's a system I've not got to play that much, I think it'd be interesting to do some kind of Let's Play streams on here, but I might wait until I've got someone with me, maybe one of the other YamYams will get on here and we'll do us like a 2-player thing, so I've got someone to kind of bounce back off, if you know what I mean. But the PC Engine, definitely an interesting system, definitely one I'd recommend to other people. And the SD System 3 is a must-have piece of kit if you're going to get one. So anyway, I've got a couple of other streams coming up. I'm going to be doing a couple of videos on repair tips. I'm going to be servicing a NES. I'm going to be servicing PS1, and I'm also going to be showing you how to add hard drive functionality to a PS2. So, you know, nothing too complex or technical, but hopefully I'll be able to show you on camera what it's like to be able to do those and how to go about it, and try and follow me in real time so you can see just how difficult it is or isn't. I'll also be modding a SNES Mini, and I'm still yet to do my other videos that I've promised I'm going to do, like Retro Gaming Room 101. I will get round to those, it's just finding the time to do it. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the stream, and I'm going to go and chill out in front of the TV for a bit now, so see you later.